Alrighty. Bienvenidos y gracias a todos por tu tiempo de esta noche. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time to join us. My name is Alex Kim. I am the Associate General Manager for Development and Grants at KPBS. I'm really excited that you can take time to join us for this important and timely conversation titled Intercambio, a conversation on the cross-border economy. And if you can believe, this is our first in-person community conversation in the last 2.5 years. This is also a special event because we're doing both in person and we're streaming it live. So welcome everyone who's live streaming at home. And before we get started with this discussion, Southwestern Community College District Board President Roberto Alcontar would like to say a few words. Welcome, Roberto.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Buenas noches a las personas que están aquí con nosotros desde México. Bienvenidos a su colegio, Southwestern College. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and our Superintendent, President Dr. Mark Sanchez, I am thrilled to welcome everyone to Southwestern College's Performing Arts Center. As the only public institution of higher education in South County, we are intimately aware of and invested in doing our part to strengthen our cross-border economy. From creating a new department of binational and international programs to straightening our partnerships with the higher education institutions in Baja California, most recently with UABC, where we signed an MOU with them. This partnership will create academic opportunities for the region's students and study abroad programs and help support the diversity and equity efforts at both institutions, allowing cohorts of low-income UABC students to attend Southwestern College and pay in-state tuition. I look forward to listening to tonight's program. We are proud to have each and every one of you here. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Roberto. So here at the Performing Arts Center at Southwestern College, and I have to say, what a beautiful facility. I know this is brand new, so just wanted to say a special thanks to the Southwestern College staff for hosting this event. But here at this event, or here at this location, we're a little more than 10 miles from the border, and making this a perfect location for this timely and important conversation about the cross-border economy. So I think many of us can recite certain data points about the cross-border region with Baja California. For instance, and many of you might already know this, the San Isidro Port of Entry is the busiest border crossing in the nation. The combined economies of San Diego and Imperial counties and Baja California have created the largest integrated economic zone along the US-Mexico border. And I think many of you would agree that this is such a vital binational economy. However, how do long wait times across the border and ongoing political focus on security, border security, impact the economies on both sides? So tonight, our experts will explore this topic further and other topics as well to help illuminate our shared economic and cultural partnership. And it's worth mentioning that this topic comes from you, from our community members. So I wanted to say thank you. And because this idea came from you, we'd like to hear from you. So I want to invite those in attendance here and those viewing this via live stream to ask questions of our panelists at the end. And so for those of you who are live streaming at home, please enter your questions in the live chat and we'll try our best to answer all of the questions. So now I'd like to introduce our moderator, Gustavo Solis. Gustavo became the investigative border reporter at KPBS in 2021. He was born in Mexico City and he grew up right here in San Diego. He's worked across the country as a reporter in New York, Miami, Palm Springs, LA, and San Diego. Did I miss anything? Okay, I got them all. And in 2018, he was part of a team of reporters who shared a Pulitzer Prize for explanatory journalism. Gustavo can be found surfing on both sides of the border. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gustavo. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex. And hello and welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're all here. As Alex said, I'm the border reporter at KPBS, and also hello to our virtual audience. Kind of pretty excited to be here to discuss border economy today. When I started, one of the things I told my bosses was I didn't want to just do stories about crime and drugs and narcos in Tijuana. I wanted to do more culture and business stories and tell people about the nicer side of Tijuana, Baja California that doesn't get as much attention as some of the grittier side of it. And it's really hard to understate the significance of the cross-border economy, right? The Cali-Baja region is estimated to produce an economic output of $250 billion a year. That's billion with a B. The big industries we know of are maquiladoras, manufacturing, medical tourism, there's biotech, there's tourism. They generate tens of thousands of jobs on both the north and south side of the border, and billions in foreign investment, which we'll also talk about here. And it's only expected to grow, and it's been growing for a long, long time. On the individual level too, like slowdowns at the border have a tremendous impact on how we cross, but not just how we cross, but how goods and services cross the border, and we'll talk about that as well. As Alex said, San Isidro is the biggest land border crossing in the nation, and wait times have skyrocketed, and that impacts everything that we're talking about. Additionally, the ongoing political focus on border security and safety has slowed down imports and has a rippling effect on both sides of the border economies as well. So tonight we've got a pretty exciting panel of experts right now on both sides of the border. They work in business and government. Some have worked in government and then business, or in business and then government, and then they know what they're talking about. And fortunately for us, they'll do most of the talking. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. We have Paula Avila. You are the current Chief of Staff for Todd Gloria. Worked in public and private sectors for the last 25 years, specializing in public policy and government affairs. Ernesto Bravo is Western Division President for Tecma, which is a company that streamlines the process of foreign and U.S. manufacturing companies relocating and operating in Mexico. So Ernesto is the person that American companies call if they want to expand or open a business in Mexico, and he knows what it's like to operate in Mexico and what the American companies are kind of thinking. Denise Garcia, Chief of Staff for Supervisor Nora Vargas, who used to actually work here at Southwestern College. Nora Vargas, not Denise. Denise was born in Tijuana and raised in San Diego. You served as Director of International Affairs for San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, and you were also Deputy Director for Department of Government Affairs. We also have Kurt Honnold, who you were here just like a couple weeks ago. Yes. I covered a forum, which you talked in, and you said some really interesting things, so I'm hoping you do a repeat performance on that. You are currently the Secretary of Economy and Innovation for the state of Baja California. You spent, you're a former telecommunications executive, former president of Baja Studios, which is an international filming studio, and you were also mayor of Tijuana. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last but not least, we have Joe Smith, Senior Vice President of Coldwell Banker Real Estate, CBRE. For the last 25 years, you focused on commercial real estate sales and leasing on the U.S.-Mexico border and expanding also into mainland Mexico. And I'll be your moderator. So I want to start the conversation with everyone kind of being in the same headspace, right? And Ernesto, I think you could help us out with this. We're talking about something that's not always fully understood, the cross-border economy. Can you just give us a quick overview of the border economy? Like, what was it 20 years ago? What is it now? Where do you see it going? I mean, you've been in it for a long time. Absolutely. Thank you, Gustavo. First of all, thank you, Gustavo, for the invitation. Thank you, KPBS, for organizing and Southwestern for hosting this. But great topic, and I commend you and KPBS for structuring this and allowing us to kind of increase the knowledge about our cross-border economy here on the San Diego side. Speaking specifically about manufacturing and that whole world of the cross-border economy that's been created over the past 3 decades, really, started out in the 80s. And it started with Mexico creating a program to allow, really to generate employment and foreign direct investment into Mexico. That was the original purpose, and that continues to be the purpose of the Maquiladora program. It's been extremely successful all along the border, and especially in Tijuana, which is in the top 2 cities along the border and overall in Mexico total in terms of employment and foreign direct investment and exports, mostly into the US. So it started in the 80s, and throughout the 80s we grew
as more companies realize the value of setting up operations in Tijuana especially. And then in the 90s, where it really kind of jump-started was with the passing of NAFTA in 1994. So when NAFTA passed, all of a sudden we started seeing increased direct investment, increased employment, and those are really a great decade for Tijuana in terms of that growth. We got up to 150, 160,000 manufacturing jobs back then. And then came the 2000s. In the 2001, China joined the WTO. And we saw a significant impact from, in a lot of industries and a lot of sectors within Tijuana and manufacturing that went to Asia, not just China, but Asia in general. And that decreased, that along with recessions that happen occasionally, and that has always have a big impact on manufacturing employment in Mexico, really kind of maybe decreased the level of growth and even decreased it a little bit in terms of employment. Then came the 2010s, and where we saw just, especially after the recession of 08, the Great Recession, we saw significant growth to the level where it really has not stopped in the last more than a decade. Today, we stand at over 200,000 manufacturing jobs in Tijuana. And these jobs are not what they used to be in the 80s, where it was mostly just unskilled labor doing very repetitive tasks. Nowadays, the level of manufacturing that we have in Tijuana is world-class. The level of talent that we have in Tijuana is world-class. And so we're talking now about engineering, product development, very advanced software programming, and many, many other activities that 30 years ago definitely were not the case. And nowadays we're seeing that impact economically and really benefiting not just Tijuana, but I think all of the region. So.
Anyone else want to add? I know, Kurt, I saw you nodding your head a lot.
No, he said it very, very well. I want to hire him
would,
now to work for me. And
I would just add, that I think it's a well-kept secret, similar to San Diego's diversity of its economy. We're known in San Diego as a tourism mecca, right? And we're Sunshine City. But there's so much more to San Diego than that. And similarly, our cross-border region, it's much more than just manufacturing, even advanced manufacturing, how that has shifted. I mean, we have an incredible, culinary scene, craft brewing, arts and culture and theater, that's just been exploding, and different types of jobs. Also, I think our other panelists will speak to this, but the increase of residential development, and other sporting, industry. So it's just, I think it's very diversified, and people don't understand how much there is really.
I think it's a really exciting time. Now, I've heard, I think, Ernesto, you've mentioned it. Joe, we've talked about this. It's kind of like the boom times in Tijuana right now in some respects, which must be kind of nice to be where you're at right now to see it, to be where we're all at to see it.
And I'll chime in really quick. And what's really exciting too is that we're actually talking about it. A lot of times we talk amongst each other because we're the ones that are the border people, right? I say the border groupies because a lot of us have worked in this in very many different jobs and capacities, but we're actually talking about it. So thank you to KPBS and to you and to Southwestern College for hosting us, but we're actually having a dialogue. And like you said, you don't want to just talk about the violence and the negative aspects. We want to talk about what the benefit and how we actually support each other. And it's not only manufacturing, it's not only tourism, whether it's medical tourism or culinary experiences, it's actually about the relationships and the relationships across the border and how we build that at all different capacities. So yeah, absolutely very exciting to have worked in this for this long and to actually see us be able to talk about it and share it with the entire region and the nation.
Well, I love, like I said earlier, I love the fact that we have a good mix of folks who work in and out of government. And I'm curious to hear from different members of the board, just how, of the panel, sorry, like in your view, like what role does local government play in helping and also in hurting the cross-border economy? Joe, we haven't heard from you. I don't know if you want to jump in on this.
Just
being cautious on jumping in. I think the biggest, in my perspective, is a little bit different because we're on the ground. And when the border crossing in Otay opened, we were there. And the first manufacturing company that located in Otay Mesa was Sanyo, and we brought them there. That's when California was manufacturing, which it isn't so much anymore. And we're on the ground every day in Tijuana, Mexicali, or Tecate. And I think that, I don't want to pop anybody's balloon there, but there isn't a lot that local government can or can't do to change what goes on in multinational boardrooms today. They are not so worried about the border wait. They're not worried about how long it takes a truck to get across the border because they compare it to China and they want to reduce their China footprint. But what does affect them and where local governments do directly affect them is infrastructure. Right now, we can't get more buildings in Tijuana. There's not one, 85 million square feet of space in Tijuana, 35 million square feet in Mexicali, 6 million in Tecate, and during the first quarter, not one company moved out, not one. There are 0 vacant industrial buildings in Tijuana today. And you go, well, why? Well, the reason why is getting approval for zoning is crazy hard and way too hard. Infrastructure. You have to kind of imagine that we're in San Diego and they decide to take out Highway 5, take out 805, and put all those cars on Broadway or some other arterial. And that's what you have with Tijuana. It's just the way it grew. They're doing the best they can. And I feel very fortunate because I'm a guest there every day. But the reality is, traffic, we're choking on traffic. We don't have enough water. We don't have enough sewer, and there's no electrical. So right now, we have probably 2 million square feet of companies that would like to start in Tijuana today, reduce their China footprint, and we can't find any place for them. We're leasing buildings off site plans that won't even start construction until 2023. So the reality is that where local governments can help is providing the infrastructure necessary, the platform for manufacturers to be able to hook into the sewer, hook into the water, and get electrical capacity.
Just so I understood, you're having companies interested in buildings that won't be starting to be built until a couple of years from now.
Over a year.
Wow.
Oh, the pipeline right now in Tijuana, the desire is huge. The ability to locate companies there is extremely difficult. Ernesto, he jokes with me because we know each other. And he called me the other day, we were talking the other day, and he said, what's going on? I said, crazy busy. And he goes, what? Driving around looking at what? But what happens is the companies come here and they don't believe us that there are no buildings. So we need to run the process, run the show. And fortunately, we have guys like Kurt now who comes from the private sector. He is extremely successful in the private sector. He understands what's needed. So hopefully with the new administrations in Tijuana and Mexicali, we'll see a turnaround in terms of investing in infrastructure.
It's really
And
interesting.
what
we're doing is, because what he just said, we talked to the CFE, who is the electrical company in Mexico. And also, in Baja California, the state owns the water, let's say. So what we do is we are looking in areas in Baja California where we know is electricity and also we know is water. So what we're doing now is directing the new investments or new buildings to put it there because we know the infrastructure is there. So we are doing that already. And we're talking to the CFE in order to make sure that when the building is done, they have truly they have the power. And yes, the reason we have these problems is because in 7.5 million people live in Cali Baja. and 2.2 million workers are related to the Cali Baja, both sides of the border. So this Cali Baja is being very beneficial for many people. Not only that, because of the cost of living in San Diego, a lot of people is moving to Baja California and Tijuana, for example, because it's less costly to live there. So we have now another problem. They say that we have to build condominiums and houses for people that wants to live in Baja because it's less costly than in San Diego.
Doesn't that just put more stress? Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry?
Sorry to interrupt, but doesn't that just put more stress on the limited infrastructure?
That's something that we're working and something that we have to be very innovative. And being innovative is looking ways to make the crossing faster. Because these people that want to live in Baja California, they want to keep working in San Diego. So we need to find ways more innovative to cross the border easier and faster. We understand that we need to comply with the security in the border. We understand that. But if we find innovative ways to cross the border, we'll make easier for people to cross border easier. Perfect. And it's a lot of families only, because that's what you say. It's not only people that go and do business or tourism. It's families in both sides of the border that they are related, and they cross to visit each other. So we need to make better ways to cross, not 2 or 3 hours. That's not good.
Perfect. Hold that thought. I want to go back to some of those ways, but Paula, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just, part of the interesting point I think to make is, as was mentioned, in the pandemic actually spurred a growth in Tijuana. You saw a growth in maquiladoras and business growth, more moving there. And the reason for that, one of the reasons I think, is because we saw the, supply chain completely disrupted with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And nearshoring was already starting to happen. The pandemic helped to accelerate that, and you had to find innovative ways to, get a product to the consumer. And companies saw that opportunity in Tijuana, because then it really cut down and circumvented a lot of that issue. But also, just to respond to your question about local government, I think there's a lot that local government can do, and that we are doing. We're my boss, the mayor's the mayor of the largest border city in the U.S.-Mexico border, and his position to advocate for the cross-border economy and the region is tremendous, because we're very far away from D.C., where decisions are being made at the federal level that impact the region. Likewise, for Tijuana, very far away from Mexico City, its capital. For two cities that are that geographically separated from the decision makers, you need to rely on local government to advocate for you and push policies that help support the growth, smart growth of the region. And that's why my boss is vice chair of the Border Policy Committee at U.S. Conference of Mayors. He goes to Washington, D.C. very often to advocate for the region, and has positioned himself in that regard because he believes in this region. And that's what we have to do. We have to do that. And I know same goes for the supervisor and Kurt at that level for his involvement in the state of Baja to advocate similarly in Mexico City.
Yeah, as you said, my boss is the vice chair of the County Board of Supervisors, and for the first time in the county's history, you do have a binational woman sitting on the board. So again, going back to elevating the discussion, right, and building those relationships. The county board now, her as the vice chair, has relationships with the governor, they call each other, with the mayor of Tijuana, and also building on that, right? Talking about what we did in the pandemic, we were able to bring vaccines to students in Baja, in Tijuana. That wouldn't happen without the actual relationships that we had, without the Mexican consulate and the relationship that we have here in San Diego, and with the drive and the leadership of local leaders, elected officials here in San Diego. So there's definitely a lot. There's economic development, there's business, there's manufacturing, but again, bringing in the ties. And how does government work on that? It's because you have to have the leadership, the drive, and the desire, and know how both governments work as well. And so not only were we able to do that, we were able to also vaccinate maquiladora workers at the port of entry. And again, it's a federal property that we were able to bring UCSD to come vaccinate maquiladora workers in Otay Mesa to be able to grow the vaccines. And again, that was local. Even though working with federal government, it was local leadership. So I think that's really important to make sure that we say.
Perfect. Thanks for those examples. And like we said, right, boom times in Tijuana, companies are moving to not just Tijuana, but the whole region. That means they're not going to other places. So I'm kind of curious to hear from Ernesto. Maybe Joe, feel free to chime in. But the companies you work with who want to expand or move to the region, why are they doing it? What are some of the push factors? I'm more interested in hearing from companies in the U.S., but also companies that are in China and Europe. Why are they not expanding in the U.S. and not in, and like, why Tijuana over San Diego, for instance?
Yeah, and that it is nearshoring. That's the concept of having your production closer to the market, right? To your main market, which obviously the U.S. is the #1 market in the world, so economically. But there's really two factors right now that are driving today the companies that are going in and establishing manufacturing operations in Tijuana or anywhere along the border. There are two factors that are driving that. One is moving manufacturing from China or from Asia in general, because overall the supply chain issues that we're facing are not just China sourced, but it's all over Asia, and that lack of capacity and shipping lanes and all of that's impacting all over the world. So it's not just China, so that's one aspect. The second aspect, and we hear this repeatedly from companies in California and companies all over the US, is actually a lack of ability to retain and to even attract labor in the first place. And so there's a significant challenge that US companies are facing if they have manufacturing operations in the US where they simply cannot find workers. And that is also a big driver that's been really happening. We've only seen that in the last couple of years. And there's a lot of factors feeding that, but that's definitely one of the big factors that we're hearing directly from the companies today.
Gus, and like I said, Ernesto and I walk in the same areas. My perspective is a little bit different, but not substantially. And when we are with the multinationals, the guys from not only US, but Europe, Asia, and many of them have operations here and are expanding those. And the typical expansion is from an existing operation. It isn't typically from a new one. And after you tour them, you spend the day with them and you're drinking beers with them, they explain, the official stuff goes away and they explain why they're here. And it isn't just nearshoring. It isn't just having their goods on a boat for 2 or 3 weeks, crossing, and then another 2 weeks at Long Beach. What it is following the last election, following about 2 years ago, boardrooms started to worry about mainland China doing something that they would consider stupid regarding Taiwan. This is before Russia, Ukraine. And that their boardrooms, there are worries that if they don't reduce their China footprint, they could be stuck in the same situation as a lot of companies right now who are boycotting Russia. And then the other segment that Ernesto mentioned is, I'm not in politics, but when you talk to people that are new moving in, many of them are from California. And California, rightly or wrongly, is perceived as non-business friendly. And when you compare wage rates of the two countries, and California having that, how do I call it, persona, rightly or wrongly, that's where we see most of the new entrants. But most of the people are, and then in terms of Cali Baja, Kurt brought it up, it's extremely important. For years, Cali Baja didn't mean a lot of expansion on this side. Companies would go on the other side and money flowed, people flowed, but not so much industrial expansion. Right now, because there's no space in Tijuana, what companies are doing, they're expanding their footprint in their existing building and moving the warehousing portion, which is raw materials and finished goods, to this side. So right now, we're working with about 750,000 square feet of users who are looking in the Otay Mesa side for their raw materials and their finished goods, which typically they have held on the Mexico side. So Kurt's right. I mean, Cali Baja, but Cali Baja is growing more now than it has in the past. You can see it on the ground.
And well, Denise or Paola, how do local governments counteract or fight back against that perception or reality that California is not good for business? Like, is it policies? Is it marketing? Is it outreach? Like, how do you approach an issue that's a lot of perception potentially?
I think it's a combination of all, right? Policies, marketing, outreach, being visible and speaking out, advocating for border infrastructure to also make the cross-border flow go faster. There's the Otay Mesa East that is right now in the stage of development, right? And it's going to help trucks cross the border quicker, relieve San Isidro from all the congestion, and also help the businesses that Joe just talked about that are growing have their plants in East Otay Mesa, and then their sister company in Tijuana. So definitely advocating for that, making sure that we're visible, making sure that we talk to the companies and that we are there on the ground talking to them about what they need. East Otay Mesa is county, so making sure that we're reaching out and saying, how can we help support you? I think definitely that's one way or a couple ways how government can help.
Perfect. Just a quick note for the audience. If you have questions, now would be a good time to start lining up. Linda, where should they line up? Over here. Yeah. Oh, the microphone right over here. Thank you. Yeah.
And I agree with Denise. My former role was in the private sector. I worked for a large business organization, and we heard from companies constantly. They want to see that government, they will, part of their decision making is whether to expand or relocate is how much support is there from government for the business community. And so the more we advocate and are vocal and are there as proponents, they will then feel more confident in investing. Like, okay, this border region is one that is of interest because of the high level of collaboration. And I see they're signing MOUs and they're, very prominent and vocal, as Denise said.
And utilizing your chambers. When Paola was in a large business organization and I was in government at the city level, we would take delegations to our nation's capitals on both sides, right? And making sure we were talking not only to local officials, but also to federal officials about the importance and the need to be a business-friendly country on both sides.
Gustavo, I just want to say something because
sure.
sometimes it sounds like we don't have we have a big problem and we don't have the infrastructure. Yes, it's a good problem to have. It's better not to have a problem. But we are working on having enough electricity and working with the water, so Baja California will have no problems in the future. By 2024, the Otay 2 is going to be open. By 2024, we're going to have enough electricity to it will continue to grow, but it's gonna two plants being built, ciclo combinado, and one solar in Puerto Peñasco. So that is gonna help us a lot. But I want to say something, and the world, like you say, is changing, and what we're doing in the government, and that's what our governor told us is, let's see what's going on in the world and why is Baja growing so much. One is nearshoring. The other one is what he said, China, and they want to move most of the goods here, but nearshoring is and the other one, and that we are focusing is in technology. Technology is the future, and we are working with all the biotech companies and also everything related with medicine. I'm not saying producing medicine, I'm saying everything related with the medicine, devices, and everything, to bring them to Baja. San Diego is now not number one, is the number two in the United States in biotech, and so we are working with them in order to bring biotech to Baja. We are working with I don't know if you knew, but only in San Diego and Baja they are graduating 34% of the students, and 18 in Baja are graduating every year, and so there's a lot of people that are going out. So we need to have these kids, the schools, they need to teach them what we need. What we need is biotechnology, the software engineer, and instead of having now big plants, we're looking at buildings going up, because these people that wants to the new companies, they need technical and engineers. So that's what we are focusing now, and that's the business that we want to bring to Tijuana. So we need to forecast the future. Let's say what is coming, and that's what we're doing now in Baja. So, and that's Cali Baja, because if we don't do it together, and then it's not going to work. The formula is really working, and because Denise and Paola, we right now have bosses in the politics. I have the governor, mayor, and the supervisor. But we've been working with Cali Baja for many years. So the stars are aligned, and because they're aligned is that we understand what we need to do, and we are the soldiers who are making things happen, and our bosses understand what we need to do. So I just wanted to say that we have problems, yes, but it's nothing that is going to stop our growth in Cali Baja.
Perfect. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to like how people can just be more active in the cross-border economy, right? There are some barriers we haven't talked about, like cultural language barriers. And Joe, I'm kind of curious to hear from you, just because I'm assuming you may have stood out when you were in TJ and starting out working there. Yeah.
Well,
tell us, like,
if you look closely, I think I'm the only one with blue eyes. So I'm an absolute gringo, and I wear that with pride. And I think one of the things, I was introduced to Mexico when I was in high school, at Saints, because there was a big contingency of guys there from Tijuana. And then when I got out of the Air Force, my first job was selling Pampers in South County, and my biggest accounts were Dorian's and Tiendas Ascarin. So I was introduced, and then the Japanese adopted me for doing deals, and they sent me to Tijuana. The big thing is that the typical gringo, because we're proud to be just regular guys, is not to be like a typical guy from the US that knows everything, that's pushy, that goes in and tells people how they have to do business, that we understand that we're a guest in Mexico, and we're fortunate guests. But we have to adapt to the Mexican way of doing business, which is not the same. The concepts are different. The more that you can be involved on a day-to-day basis, like my son is fluent in Spanish, and he was raised more Mexican than US. He grew up around all Mexican kids. So it's very important that we not get focused just on the business side of it, that we be on the social side. And it's important for us to understand that we're guests, understand the culture, understand how business is done, and open your mind and open your eyes. And if you act correctly, there is nobody that won't welcome you in business in Mexico. It's just a different way, but you have to understand, you can't go down and tell them how they should be running their operation. But at the same time, we can be honest and exchange ideas. But I've been adopted, by so many close Mexican friends. I have many more Mexican friends than US friends. And it's not purposeful, it's just how we live. And our background. And the start was St. Augustine, the guys from there, we hung with them. And you get, I think you went to Saints, and I think you might have gone there.
My son.
There you
My
go.
son.
And all the great people, Roger Hitchcock, Valdo Martinez, all great people. But long story short is, we need to open our minds, open our eyes, and open our hearts to to our friends. And we're guests in their country. Yeah.
Perfect. Last, I want to end with just the border wait time issue, right? I think, Kurt, we can start with you. I kind of want to get updates on some of the ideas you were talking about when you were last year, a CBX for the trolley, a possible ferry. I'll do personally on Sunday. I went to Mexico City for the weekend, came back CBX. I waited an hour to cross at
CBX.
CBX. Yeah, I mean, I have Sentry, but my brother doesn't, so I had to wait with my brother.
You're a good brother.
Ask your brother to
You
get a
Yeah.
Sentry.
would do that, yeah.
But an hour for CBX, for something that you pay for that shouldn't be an hour, you get there and there were only like 3 or 4 CBP booths open, and I think that's part of the issue. But I mean, how big of a problem is it? How much of a frustration is it? And how far along are we on having legitimate solutions to the
Well,
situation?
it is a problem. And Denise, Denise, Paola, and myself, we've been.
You two are next, by the way.
In some way, we've been together in this, trying to make both governments to understand that we are so far from Washington and Mexico City that they need to put attention to the border. And we understand, again, security. But the people in blue uniform, they need more people to work, because they cannot open all the gates. The gates, they cannot open all the gates because they have now some in the front checking that the people that have their documents, because it's a lot of Russians trying to cross the border without documents, and they have to take care of them before in the United States. And they say, no. If you're not, you don't have legal documents, you have to get back. So that's the reason the lines are right now longer. OTAI 2 is going to solve the problem, like Dennis say, but we need to find different ways to make easier for people to cross the border. CBX, I think nobody believed or knew how big this spread was. We thought it was going to be good, but not as good as it is. And what it tells us is a lot of people crossing the border and both sides, going south or going north, and also San Isidro and Otay. And the reason is because this Cali-Baja is a lot of not only business, but also is people that go for tourism both sides of the border, and families. 32% of the people, economic active people in Tijuana, live in Tijuana and work in San Diego. 32%. So that's a lot of people that needs to cross the border every day to work. Some of them make 2 hours or 3 hours daily, and going back, because they finish working 3, 4, or 5. That's when the lines are going south are long too. So imagine losing 5 hours of their time making line. That's not good. That's not human. So if we understand that it's going to be no more border crossings for the Tijuana, let's say only Tijuana and Tecate, and then we need to find ways more innovative in order to cross. One of them is the CBX trolley. So when we say CBX trolley, is a bridge for people that wants to use the trolley to cross the border and go to work. So those people will make the people that are using the trolley will make the line. So we reduce people from the San Isidro line. The other one is the bike routes. The Major Gloria, he's already very close to finish with Santac, the Ciclovia, and also in our side. And the same company that rents bicycles in the United States, the same company is going to rent the bicycles in Tijuana. So you can rent a bicycle in Tijuana, cross to go to work, leave it, and then rent it again to get back. So it will be easier to also to cross and also you make exercise. And the other one is the ferries. And we want to start with Ensenada to the port of San Diego, but in the future we want to, and we already have the permit for the API in Rosarito, to make another ferry from Rosarito to San Diego. So those are innovative ways to make people, to have people crossing the border other than cars. But if we reduce people from using cars, also is going to help us. So that's why we need the trolley, we need bikes, we need ferries, we need to find trains, we need to find ways to make easier to people to cross the border and to move in Tijuana and also in San Diego instead of cars.
Well, but how realistic are there? I mean, do you have like timetables of when that could potentially happen?
We are making the factibility study for the trolley and for the ferries. And the company that's doing the study is the same company that did the OTAI 2. They, by the end of this month, July, by the end of July, we will have the study done. And then when it's done, and then we will share it with the US side so we can start. We are already working parallel, but now officially start working and making the projects work.
And with the OTAI 2 or OTAI East, I mean, would we get stuck in the same situation as San Isidro? Like, we're getting a bunch of new lanes, but what good are new lanes if half of them, not half, if a quarter are closed? Yeah.
Okay,
like
let me tell you, and I'm sorry
lanes,
that I'm thinking the word, but something that I want to say. In the US side, the Caltrans and Sandac did their job. They already have the highway all the way to where the OTAI 2 is going to be. In our side, we didn't have nothing. Finally, because of our governor started being the leader of the project, now we already bought the right of land for the highway, the same as Sandac did, and it's already purchased. Now we're going to start moving the towers of the CFA. The SEMPRE is going to move their pipe, and also the water that connects with San Diego. We have a water that connects both countries. Those are going to start moving very soon. So with that in mind, and also where the facilities will be, is in the process of purchasing all the land. But with that, we are going to be complying with the 2024 date to open the OTAI 2. So that's something that's going to happen.
And I'll just chime in with, those are great, and they will help with the congestion. But also in the near term, we need more people to sign up for the traveler programs, right? Sentry, the commuter programs, to be able to have the faster access, because then you get fully vetted to be able to cross. And that way, they're not waiting the 2-3 hour wait times. Not everyone's available to do that. Not everyone qualifies for it. But the more people we get in those programs, the faster they can cross.
I'd prefer they don't sign up anybody else. Because after you spend a day, and Ernesto and I do the same thing, you're hot, you've been pushed around, you feel like the whole world is dumping on you. We always go through OTAI because we live in South Chula Vista. So we'll come through OTAI, make the turn off Bellas Artes, or we're still see traffic out onto Bellas Artes, backed up for the Sentry. So it's not unusual to wait 45 minutes at the Sentry in OTAI. And the ultimate nightmare, Pesi de Grande, is when you single line, because our guys, our meager guys, they make everybody go in one lane. So what you do is your lane goes all the way back to the main street at Bellas Artes, wraps around, and so the Tijuana police come down and they double lane you. They send everybody down, right, Ernesto? The other lane, so that means every car that's going by you is going to be ahead of you in line. So your wait just went from 30 minutes to 45 overnight. So what we need to do is, we've got the roadways. It would be nice if we could coordinate with the Border Protection guys to allow 2 lanes. They've got 3 Sentry lanes, but you have to go through 1 lane to go into the 3. It could be solved immediately. Just somebody making a phone call and say, look it, bro, give these guys a break. So that's for those of us who aren't going to be bike riding or skateboarding or whatever other thing.
You also need additional
ferry
staffing.
Yeah.
You need more staffing. That's always going to be.
No,
an
they
issue
don't
as well.
even need more staffing. All they have to do is say, you can go, the three kiosks are manned. There are people checking, but what they make you do is go in 1 lane to enter the three, and you're sitting there going, wait a second, I've been in line for 30 minutes just, so all it takes, sincerely, is if some high-ranking politician stayed in that line 1 time, I guarantee you, they would make a call, and that would be solved immediately for Ernesto and I. Think about us.
Oh, don't worry, we'll be making
Why
that call on your
only
behalf.
2 guys?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
everybody.
think that's the beauty of
You're in the
the,
black Suburban. You go to the front of the line.
No.
that's the beauty of
Trust
the
me, no.
East OTAI Mesa Port of Entry, is that it's a blank slate to design it in a very smart way where you're not creating a funnel, and you can have access to those lanes. But to your point, you create lanes, you can have a beautiful designed port of entry, but Denise nailed it. We don't have the staffing right now. There's a workforce shortage everybody's experiencing, so is the federal government, so is the local government. We don't have enough agents right now to staff all the booths. Even if you have every lane open, if you have every booth, you don't have the staffing. And we're never going to, because of what was said when we started this conversation. This is a region that's going to continue growing, and it's going to continue to attract more investment. So we need to plan for the future. The question that you asked, is this a pipe dream? Well, that question was same asked of CBX 20 years ago. It took 20 years to build it. Likewise, we have to think of the future, because we're going to keep growing, and we can't keep just building new ports of entry either. We have to think innovatively. How do we use technology? How do we, not just build new ports of entry and more lanes, but make it faster and more efficient, because we have to plan for the future. It takes so many years. It takes it takes the vision, it takes that commitment, and saying it's not a pipe dream. We're committed to it. We're going to see it happen. And I think that's what we need for the future. And I think it is possible. We've seen it before, and it takes the private sector, it takes the public sector to make it happen.
What's Sandag's view on it? Because I know, so every year there's you have great data and great studies on it. Like how there was something like extra 15 minutes of wait time added X amount of billions of dollars in economic losses. I mean, what's the how does Sandag approach a problem that is mostly at the hands of the federal government?
200 million per day is the economy between the two Cali-Baja per day. 200 million. And that's only the economy of the goods and everything that are being produced. But add the people that goes and buys from Tijuana that goes and buys to San Diego, or people from San Diego that goes and buys to Baja California. So add that. And then tourism. People that comes from all over the world, that comes to San Diego, they want, oh, Mexico is right there. It's another country that I can visit. Or the other way around. So it's the economy in between, and that's why is the border crossing is the most used in the world, is because of that. So if government, Washington and Mexico City, but especially Washington, needs to understand how the big economy that we have here, in order to have more people, because they need more people in the border. And I'm talking about the blue uniform and customs protection. They need to have more people, so there's more lines open, because they have the facilities. They put a lot of money in San Isidro, a lot of money, and they have a lot of gates. So if they open all, the line will be very short. So and forget about the economy. 5 hours back and forth, wasting time. That's derecho humano. And also we are not helping the atmosphere. So imagine if we can make it faster. So if Washington understand, if they put more people, it's going to cost them, yes, but we're paying the taxes. The economy is paying the taxes. So put more people and the economy will grow.
Perfect. I want to start moving on to a little bit of listener audience questions. We got some online already before. Some we've gone over and kind of answered already. Some we've just alluded to, but this one from Alvaro Alvarez is pretty interesting. We haven't talked too much about just that balance of security and economy, right? There's this rhetoric outside of San Diego where there's kind of a crisis at the border, and there's open borders, and people who don't live in the border think of the border only in terms of security. And that kind of sucks up a lot of the oxygen in conversations we're having. But how do you balance the security, the legitimate security concerns associated with the border with the opening up and helping the economy kind of prosper and grow and flourish? Like just describe that inner tension, and then what do you do about it? How do you appease both sides?
I mean, I would say that an efficient border is a secure border. It's one and the same. The more efficient you are, the more you use technology, the cross-border collaboration, information sharing across law enforcement agencies across the border. That is how you pinpoint and really ensure security. And having, a 5-hour wait time is not going to help improve security. You want to move the 95% of secured trade and travel through the port of entry, so then they can focus on that 5-10% that is illegitimate. And I think that's through efficiency and technology.
And what about the security, or really like the safety perceived or real threat in terms of businesses being established in the region? Ernesto, I'm sure you get a lot of questions like, is it safe to move my operations there? And Joe, you probably get them too. Like how do you address those questions, and how big or little of a concern is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the security aspect, that the biggest concern security-wise that we have in manufacturing factories in Tijuana is really just contraband. There's not a lot of, fortunately, and this has been proven out for the past 30 years, we don't have a major threat in terms of physical security or that type of thing. The main threat is really contraband. And actually, I have to recognize one of the programs that has been established. It started with the US CBP, and Mexico has also adopted a very similar program. It's called CTPAT and OEA in Mexico. And it's a program that establishes, there's literally like 28 different characteristics or security and supply chain security factors that you have to take into consideration and apply in your factory to be able to get the certification. And what it is it's basically like a sentry for commerce. So you get access to a special lane, a privileged lane that's a shorter wait time, that has a lot of benefits, obviously. And you're able to also ensure the US government and CBP that your cargo is going to be significantly safer than somebody who's not CTPAT certified, because you've got to have additional video security and just a lot of record keeping that is actually, and checkpoints within the factory to make sure that what is leaving that factory goes straight to the border and gets across, and there's no manipulation of the cargo in any way. So it's been a very successful program. We have probably at least 10 client factories in Tijuana today, and another 10 or 20 in Juarez as well, that are taking advantage of that program. And it's been a huge success. And the OEA counterpart, the Mexican counterpart, has also been very successful to expand that and to encourage that level of trade. So.
My perception is a tad different, okay? Because we're on the road, we're there, and there are areas in Tijuana where we won't go after dark. I mean, I'll send my son. He's lived a good life. He's 34. He's done everything he needs to do. But no, all kidding aside, there are areas in Tijuana where we will not go after dark. If you take a look at what's happened in the Bajío, when the Bajío initially started to expand, there were where the major auto manufacturers went, the Nissan, GM, they located there. We took 15 different Japanese companies that are in Tijuana into the Bajío to open manufacturing operations for auto supply, which is not a big one in Tijuana. And right now, the Bajío is a very dangerous place. It's a reality. But what you need to do is you need to use your head. It's just like areas in San Diego, I won't go at night. There's areas in Chicago, I won't go at night, or New York, I won't go at night. So you just need to use your head. And it's just something to keep in mind. We always are watching where we stop and what we do. And that's just what you do when you're in Mexico. But you do the same thing on this side. It just gets a much bigger write-up there. But to pretend like there's no issue is not realistic, not realistic. But in general terms, what Ernesto is saying about contraband is true. But we need to use our head, same as we do in big cities in the US side.
We got another listener question from Judith Sanchez. We've talked about this before. I think everyone on the panel would agree that we need more CBP staffing at all the lanes. I mean, Ped West is still closed, and we don't know why or when it will open. Are any of you in touch with CBP? Do we know why they aren't staffing and what's the holdup and when that might happen?
Money,
Yeah.
budget. That's the answer.
Yeah, and we're in contact with them very
Don't they have like
often.
48 billion?
It is,
budget?
yeah, so their staffing was impacted just like many others in the pandemic. You have many that, they'll have to isolate, if they test positive. The Great Resignation also impacted CBP. And the hiring process is very lengthy for CBP. We've been advocating for some time to try and reduce the hiring process. In some cases, it could take 9 months. Who's going to wait 9 months for a job? It is very difficult. So I think a lot of it has to do with that, in addition to funding, and especially with the new port of entry, that's going to require more staffing because it's a new port of entry, and that is something that we've been advocating for as well.
The government in the United States invests so much money in technology, so much, like you say, in the San Isidro, Otay, and now the new one too, that they're not using the technology because it's there. But they in order to make it work, they need staff. So it's budget. So we need to push our congressmen and our senators in order for the next budget of next year to put more staff to CBP. And also for the new port of entry, they know they need the senators and the congressmen, especially in California, to help them bring the money for the people in blue, CBP, to be there.
Yeah, no, I've spoken with Congressman Juan Vargas about it, and he said he's already trying to push people to do it. We'll see if he's successful or not, but he's at least trying. And the last question, this one was an anonymous listener question. But do we know, like we've talked about it being boom times right now, which is kind of odd to think about because we've just been through a pandemic, which kind of hurt the economy. So like, what was the impact, or what has been the impact of the pandemic on cross-border? It sounds like from the outside looking in, it sounds like it kind of helped a little bit in terms of bringing some of the pre-existing supply chain issues to the forefront, kind of speeding up some of that departure from China and Asia. But like, where are we? Like, what was the impact? How badly did it hurt, if at all, the cross-border economy, and how is it bouncing back?
That's a great question. I would say, if I may, there's two things that immediately happened that we're still living with that impact. Number one, obviously, the initially back in 2020, and this was around March timeframe, when we kind of realized the scope and the level of what we were facing. Obviously, the first interest was just safety and health, and making sure that we have the proper protocols in place, and making sure that we focus on safety and the health of the staff in the factories. And that was actually very successful. I think, I hope everyone here would agree, I think in the factories in Tijuana, for a lot of cases in terms of the level of care people would receive from the medical services that usually factories have, and from the level of education that people received, and personal protective equipment as well. I think that the factories in many cases and for many people were the safest places that they could possibly be, yes, because of the level of protocols that were implemented early on. And we still continue to see that today, very strict adherence to those protocols, and the evolution as we've seen the pandemic evolve, and we've been reacting to that. So number one, that was an important aspect of it. I think we took that very seriously, and it was very successful. And also, I think that led to a lot of collaboration across the border, and also between government and the government and the private sector in Tijuana specifically. So that was one aspect. The second aspect, and I think it's related to part of the things we've talked about today in terms of the lack of available space, but immediately the developers, the people that build the buildings and finance the buildings in Tijuana for factories to be set up in, immediately froze. And that was actually the second time in probably about 5 years that it immediately froze, in 3 or 4 years that all construction stopped. The people interested in coming to Tijuana didn't stop, and the companies, but construction stopped, and that was because of the level of risk. This happened again, or it happened once in 2017 as well, when the topic of canceling NAFTA was out there and hit the media, and everyone was talking about it. Construction stopped back then as well. And so, unfortunately, it took 6 months or a year for that construction to ramp back up again. And we saw that in 17, we saw that in 2020 again. And that is, I think, one of the factors that has led to the scarcity of space that we have today, that we're still dealing with, and that hopefully, however, on a positive side, we're seeing that innovation in Tijuana. Developers are now building their own power stations to be able to supply power to the industry. And we're seeing that level of innovation because everyone recognizes, I think, not on this panel, certainly, and I think with your efforts to communicate to everyone here in the region, we have an incredible opportunity for growth. And this growth, I think, can go on for 5, 10 years, if not longer, recession or no recession, whatever happens in the near term. In the long term, we have years and years of opportunity that will benefit the quality of life for people on both sides of the border. And it's just a humongous, and we're excited to be a part of this and thankful, I think, so.
Perfect. And just wrapping up real quick.
And I just wanted to mention, though,
sure.
really quick before you wrap up, is that I agree with you, Ernesto. There's a mix, but also there was 200 businesses in San Isidro that closed down. So there were businesses, a lot of businesses that suffered. And also when the border shut down and people could not come across, that was a devastating impact of the pandemic and COVID. So we now see that things are growing, things are changing, we're flourishing, but it was a big hit for our border region. And I think I had to think about it right now. I was like, what did happen? Oh my gosh, the border did stop. It came to a halt. So that was very impactful for both.
Yes. Yeah, something we covered a lot, and I spoke
Yeah.
with the folks at the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know how many of the 200 are back, or not back, but replaced. Do we know?
I don't know how many of the 200 are back. I know that they've been receiving some funding to be able to come back or to help them stay afloat. But it was very devastating on how many businesses in San Isidro alone had to close down because most of their clientele are the people from Tijuana that could no longer cross. That was a huge hit for our region.
Well, to wrap up real quick, I want to give everyone a chance to do kind of like closing remarks. But just tell me, like, what are you most excited about going forward in terms of border economy, and what are you most concerned about? So most excited and most concerned. Joe, if it's okay, we can start with you and kind of come down the line.
I'm just excited about getting up every day. I mean, I think the concern is really almost like an academic question. When, as Ernesto mentioned, when a recession occurs, usually on the U.S. side, we see a slowdown in absorption on the Mexico side, keeping in mind that it's medical, the main in Tijuana is medical, aerospace, and consumer products. But this time, I think the jury's out because we think that any slowdown based on a recession is going to be substantially offset by people reducing the China footprint and further people moving out of California because of the perception that California is not business friendly. So I think Ernesto mentioned that earlier, and I think that's going to be the question. And but we're not concerned. We're just fortunate, and we feel blessed to be able to participate on a daily basis in the Cali-Baja region.
Kurt?
I'm very excited because our governor understands very well Cali-Baja. She has 2 masters. She's very smart, and she lets us work. And so that makes me very excited because we are working very much in infrastructure in Baja. Punta Colonet, making the borders faster. And what he has said, I see that we're going to grow in the next 10 years, probably double the way we're seeing right now. So that makes me very excited. What I need to do is make sure that we have what he's worried: electricity, water, safety. And if we can do that, everything is going to be better for Cali-Baja. both sides of the border.
What I'm really excited about is that the stars have aligned at a political level on the US and Mexican side. Like Kurt said, all of us have been working on this for quite some time now, and there's actually the leadership at those different levels, whether it's city, county, and in Baja, and that we'll be able to do a lot together because now we're speaking with one voice and we're united, that we will be able to go to federal government and talk about the needs and that we are going to be listened to. That Otay Mesa will be opening in 2024, that the Tijuana River Valley, we're going to finally have money that's going to be allocated through the USMCA to solve that issue. We didn't talk about that. That's a whole nother issue that we can spend hours and hours to speaking about. But just that there's a lot of will in the region, and my boss understands it. Your boss understands it. Your boss understands it. And I think that's really important. What worries me is that, like usual, the federal government won't keep up with the pace of our growth on both sides of the border.
Yes.
Because we do need more staffing, because we do need more resources. But I'm optimistic that there will be change.
Ernesto?
Yeah, you know what we're seeing, if we think about the last 2-3 decades, and we're seeing that the evolution of the industry, it's now a fairly mature industry if you consider just from the standpoint of just an analytical perspective in terms of manufacturing in Tijuana. And yet, here we are really at the start of what could be an amazing growth period for manufacturing in Tijuana. I think there are risks, yeah, obviously, absolutely. There's certain regulations that could potentially affect cargo transport across the border with, as California wants it to move to a more electrical basis, and some of the technology and the infrastructure is simply not there. And so moving that and accelerating that time frame could present risks and disruptions in that flow. But I'm very optimistic. I think that there will be a realization. There already is a realization in Washington, in Sacramento, and certainly in San Diego and the county and all the city governments, as well as in Baja and Tijuana, of the level of potential and opportunity that we have, the geopolitical aspects that have been really evolving for the past 20 years. I mean, if you think about supply chain issues, it's not just trade wars or whatever you want to call it, but it's also just natural disasters. It's the weather changes and everything else, and supply of ships and everything else. And so there's so many factors, and that has been building up over literally the past 20 years. And we're now at the stage where, if collaboratively we do things right, the opportunity is really amazing. Like I said just a few minutes ago, to really improve people's lives, quality of life, to improve the product that's being produced, to make it more efficiently, make it more green environmentally, and just really go to the next level and have the Cali-Baja region be a model for the world for how to do things right and how to produce things that have to be made. Somebody has to make stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So this is where it happens, and we're fortunate to be so close to it here.
So I would say I'm really excited because this conversation that's happening here has, because of the local advocacy and that collaboration and years of history of that, it's being talked about. Our region is being talked about outside of here. When you go to Mexico City, Washington, D.C., they know Cali-Baja now. It took us years to brand the region, and now they know what that is. Before, you had to show them a map, and now they refer to it. Last week, there was a conference held in Washington, D.C. The ambassador of Mexico's ambassador to the U.S. Was in attendance. The U.S. ambassador to Mexico was there as well. The Mexican ambassador mentioned San Diego, Tijuana, and the Cali-Baja region more than 5 times, and used our region as an example and a model for others to follow. We don't even have to. I didn't attend. I didn't even have to be there, and our region is being promoted in one of the areas that's furthest from us. So I feel like in a way, we've accomplished a lot by doing that. On the other side, what you were asking, what concerns me is we cannot lay to rest thinking we've accomplished and we're done. You mentioned, when the NAFTA was put in threat. We went through years of thinking that's the end of NAFTA. And it sounded the alarm that for years after, 30 years of it being a success, and we all knew it was, we hadn't been telling the story. No one knew that it was a success. We had failed to tell the story. And because of that, it was at risk. This Friday will be the 2-year anniversary of its replacement, the USMCA. And it took so much blood, sweat, and tears to accomplish that. I don't ever want to go through that again. We also suffered, border closures. Before the pandemic, the border was closed by the prior federal administration. That was the first, I never thought that I had seen, other than 9/11, that was the first time I couldn't imagine that happening. I don't ever want to suffer through that again. So if anything, I feel like this is a call to action. Those listening, those here in attendance, those listening, we cannot rest on our laurels and thinking that we've succeeded and this economy will just, and the region will grow and flourish on its own. We have to keep telling that story and not, go through that risk again because of what you mentioned, the perception, and those who are not here that don't know that the border and our cross-border region is an opportunity and it's the future versus something to be afraid of.
Thank you. That's a good place to end right there. I want to wrap it up. I once again want to thank all the panelists for coming, giving us your time. And I want to bring back and welcome Alex for some closing remarks.
All right, I just want to echo what Gustavo was just thanking our panelists. Thank you so much for this riveting conversation. Thank you, Gustavo, for facilitating it. I want to thank everyone for attending this event. Thank you for those attending it at home. And the conversation's not done. We want to continue this outside. We have a reception, dessert, and some appetizers. So please exit the same way that you came in, and our staff will direct you to where the reception will be. Also wanted to say thank you to Southwestern College for hosting this wonderful event. Thank you and have a great evening.